Hello, welcome to the last tax talk of 2017. My name's Anita Monteith, and with me today I have Jane Moore, who is editor of TAXline.
Hi.
And I have Mark Taylor, who is a technical manager with our IT faculty and also a cyber security specialist.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Tax Club for the day. We have some interesting topics to round up 2017, beginning with our latest finance bill, just a couple of comments on that. We also have another bunch of consultations that have been published, and I wanted just to say a word about...
As if we hadn't enough.
I know, keep us busy over Christmas. And just a word about the finance bill process. I think it's useful, isn't it, Jane, to have it laid out for us now. Now we've got the budget in the autumn, and
yes, there was a Treasury publication just last week which set out in exhaustive detail, actually, I have to say, what the new fiscal process is with the autumn budget and with the Finance Act now getting roll assent before the tax year starts. The idea being that proposals announced this autumn will then have at least a year to be consulted on before they wind up in the finance bill at the end of next year.
And I think we're encouraging the government to do more pre-consultation discussion about how they might take policies forward. And we could see, perhaps in the spring statement, the odd new idea being floated.
Yes.
But it won't be a budget.
Hopefully we'll be a bit sooner. Some of the things that are promised will appear in the new year. But yes, it won't be a budget in the spring. Well, heaven forfend.
Well, that'll be something for us to look forward to.
Yes.
A lot of the things we're going to be talking about today are actually to do with, either directly or indirectly, the tax gap. So I thought it might just be worth reminding ourselves what the tax gap is. Of course, it's made up of a number of components, but in absolute terms, the government estimates that it's currently £34 billion. And on an income estimate for this year of 769 billion, that's 6% of the money that we should be getting in that isn't. Now, obviously,
although how you estimate an unknown, I don't really know, but I know there is a method for doing it.
Well, it kind of reminds me of tests for understatement back in the days when we started auditing. Do you remember trying to find what was missing? Well, took some getting your head round. But roughly half of the tax gap is still being attributed to smaller enterprises. And of course, I think that's part of why we're seeing quite so much pressure on digitalisation of the tax system.
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's the belief that the digitalisation can help close that gap by reducing the gap between taxpayers and the government. It's trying to close that gap make it a little bit tighter. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a significant slug of that as well. I think it's just over 5 billion. This is attributed to criminals, but we'll come on to that a little bit later on. I thought we'd just start though, Jane, with a discussion on some of HMRC's current methods of trying to bring in a little bit more money.
Yes, Revenue are very keen to use methods which can have a multiplier effect. So rather than do exhaustive individual inquiries, they like to send out mail shots or have campaigns which encourage people to come forward and disclose any tax that they need to. Campaigns are exactly that where somebody needs to come forward and they can do it online now and explain what they owe. They have to self-assess usually to do that. And at the moment I think there are 2 campaigns open. One is on income or landlords letting income, and one is on second incomes of employed people. And there also is, of course, the big drive to get people to come clean about their offshore liabilities. As the information starts to flow from the Common Reporting Standard, they have to do that by the end of next September or start to face rather unpleasant penalties from October. So another thing the Revenue use are nudge letters, which are...
they sound fluffy, don't they, nudge letters?
They sound... I don't know. Yeah, they sound... kick in the pants letters.
Yeah, they don't read very fluffily.
It depends how the person receiving them, understands what they're being told, and it also depends on how the population is selected. The idea is to encourage people to do something that they're not doing at the moment, or that they perhaps ought to be doing, and that's fine. But if the person doesn't understand it, or actually hasn't got a problem with the tax return or whatever it is they're being written to about, they can be very worried by it. And it can also cause a problem. Well, two problems really. Unrepresented people who don't really understand it may be very worried. People with agents may turn to the agent.
Yes, what's this? I thought you've been doing my tax properly.
So that can cause a problem for our members,
yes,
as well as their clients.
Yeah, we had an interesting example of a nudge letter come to us only this week, actually. As you know, corporation tax filing is now done using ICAEW format and tags attached where appropriate. And there are different ways people have adopted towards tagging their information. You'll only be tagging your computations and your accounts. And if you're using proprietary software, you would assume that the tags get attached automatically. So all the big software houses, we've had a few years now to get your heads around it. What happened recently is that we were sent a copy of a nudge letter.
It's one I did earlier.
And what this one is actually saying to the in fact it's an agent here who had filed for a number of his clients, it's actually saying that we've had a look at the filings you've made for these three entities, and we've noticed there aren't very many tags attached. Well, as it happens, these are micro entities, so there is actually very little information anyway that you would be filing. So it's not possible to attach many tags. And
the letter doesn't actually say this may be absolutely fine, but just check it, it should be okay. It just says that you're responsible for tagging, and please phone us to discuss the number of tags in your client's company tax return. So this has actually succeeded in annoying another group of people. It's the software suppliers, hasn't it?
Yes, because this particular one, the client obviously went to the software supplier and said, is there a problem? They looked at it and said, no, there isn't. All the tags are there that should be there. I think there are a couple of issues perhaps we should just remind people of here. If you wind back to 2011, when all of this began, we all discovered quite quickly that you only actually needed about 12, maybe it was 15 tags on a file to get it through the government
the
gateway.
core minimum,
Exactly.
yes.
And we heard that over time there were a number of people who decided that actually what they do is just strip off the unnecessary tags and leave it just with the minimal number. HMRC stepped in last month and said, no, we're not having that anymore. We're going to reject anything that has too few tags. So that has been running alongside. This nudge letter, I think perhaps is unfortunate timing.
I think it's meant to pick up that very thing.
But it's doing it by sort of frightening the people who are actually doing it well. What we would like from our members is examples of these nudge letters, I think, so we can talk to the
this
software.
or any other sort of nudge letter.
It's all very interesting to hear that, because one of my roles also is to speak and liaise with the FRC on the use
Financial
of
Reporting Council.
And Financial Reporting Council, and to
John
talk to them.
I know.
Well done.
I'm on it.
And to talk to them about the use of XBRL, and there's a lot of discussion there about the quality of XBRL reporting. And by quality, we often mean accuracy and completeness. So is it accurate, reflects what it's supposed to, and also is it how complete it is? And we've been doing some work with the FRC to try and promote those topics within our publications, within Chartec, the IT faculty magazine. It's been reasonably successful, but I think having real world examples will really help groups like QAD, quality assurance within the ICAEW, when they visit members to say, have you seen an example of this sort of letter? the issues that they're being picked up, we can take those back into the FRC and tell them and help to join that gap up,
so
I would hope.
If we get the letters, if you've got some nudge letter examples of this particular issue, or Jane would love nudge letters of any description, because you love nudge letters, don't you?
We want to go to the revenue with examples. Nudge letters, okay, the principle I don't think we have a problem with, but they need to be clear and properly targeted. And we might want to go back over
if there's any element of that rolling into how XBRL is used, then the FRC would be keen to hear it.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to another one of the consultations.
Yes.
It's also really aimed towards people who may not be disclosing income. Jane, you've been looking at the new one on access to
on the hidden economy, which came out on the 8th of December with the rather sort of opaque title of conditionality. And what that actually means is the Revenue have a proposal that people in business who need a licence for something would need to demonstrate that they are registered for tax before they can get said licence. And the Revenue have particular sectors in mind: taxes and private hire, market trading, security industry. You've written security industry here, actually. Yes.
Oh, have I?
Bouncers, yes. Okay. Let's go for the vernacular. And landlords in some cases as well, which could affect members and their clients. So, again, perhaps not a bad idea, and one that needs exploring. And the consultation does actually set out proposals, but not firm routes, and it is seeking input, which is good. We have until the 3rd of March to say something about this, and it might well be welcomed by traders who are operating properly and feel themselves being undercut by hidden economy people in their own sector. On the other hand, you can see a whole load of admin appearing for the license people who grant the licenses, and also for the people who need the licenses. And a lot of problems. For example, how do you demonstrate that you're registered?
Or does a landlord or something?
Yes, I mean with full tax in some way. I mean you could be registered self-employed. It also mentions if you're registered as an employee. Well, that rather depends on whether your employers got their act together. And it would be, I don't know whether I can't see whether the Revenue are going to be taking this information and checking it out. I suppose eventually they would do.
I just have a bit of a horror of your local council saying to you as you go to them for your landlord licence, can you please tell me whether you are registered for tax? And then somebody in the council, you give them your UTR or whatever, or maybe you don't, because you say, well, actually, I'm going to be less than £1,000 for this year.
I think you have to give actually a letter or document or something is the idea, not just the UTR, but something from the Revenue confirming. Well,
that sounds another admin chore, but anyway.
Just a UTR anyone could make up, really, couldn't they? Let's face it, it needs to be a bit more secure. Unless the Revenue...
then maybe they're going to check them.
But they probably can, and they've got sophisticated matching software these days, the Revenue, as you know. Nonetheless, it would be an extra chore, and you wouldn't want it to hold up registration for people.
Well, I think what we need, please, from those of you who are watching this, is a few examples and comments. Please send them either to Jane or to me, or
I think it's me mostly.
I hope it'll be mostly you.
Yes, I think so. But we will be putting together a response. But we could also, practical information is really useful from the industry sectors who could be affected. The document is quite long, and
it's not an obvious document. No, I think. Could you just remind us?
Well, the word conditionality it's called tackling the hidden economy conditionality. We can put an article in our next newswire, though. Yeah.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Now, leading into talking about cybersecurity, we can't ever do anything without referring to MTD at the moment, Making Tax Digital. So, just a quick reminder of where we are. Since we did our last broadcast, we have had the finance bill that was published on the 1st of December, and we've had a number of MTD documents. Perhaps the most, the one that had the most work put into it was the MTD costings, the revised figures for that. I think again we perhaps may not agree with some of the actual premises underlying the costings. We may not agree with what those figures are, but today let's just put that to one side and just remind ourselves that we've got VAT first tax in from April 2019, and that's going to apply to businesses that are registered for VAT which have income above the VAT threshold, currently 85,000. Since the VAT threshold was frozen for the next couple of years, we at least know the cohort that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah.
What we're expecting is some draft regulations, probably based on the document that gave us an overview of MTD for VAT, published in September. We're expecting these draft regulations to land sometime before Christmas.
Oh, good.
I know, I'm not
sure
I'm
about
working
this
between
autumn
Christmas and New
budgeting,
Year, so that's fine for me, I can read them. And that will go into a lot more of the detail of what the requirements will be.
Right.
I think what we might do, Mark, is perhaps return to software for MTD, maybe in the new year, if we come back for another tax talk. But what I think both of us have been visiting recently are some of the cyber security issues.
Yes, I mean, I think so cybersecurity is really around business resilience. It's about ensuring that your organisation can withstand a cybersecurity problem, a data breach. You've been hacked potentially, or you maybe lost some data, maybe through the loss of a computer or something like that. And those principles around cybersecurity really underpin business resilience, as I say. And there's a couple of really good drivers, I think, for thinking about this. Making Tax Digital is obviously one, and the new General Data Protection Regulation coming into effect of May 2018. This is the Enhanced Data Protection Act applicable to the UK, and it applies to every size of organisation within the UK. There are a lot of changes that are coming to that particular regulation, increased consumer rights, for example, that small or any sized organisation will need to have an understanding of how they can respond to them. For example, the right to erasure. It's a really good one, I think. It's a really good example of an enhanced right. So a consumer could go to a company and say, I want all of my personal information to be deleted. Fantastic, they think that's the end of it. What they can't have deleted by the company would be any information that company is supposed to hold for regulatory reasons or other legislation reasons. For example, anti-money laundering, tax information for HMRC, company's house information, and so on. So those are new regulations. We've done a lot of work trying to promote General Data Protection Regulation to members, and just to reassure people who are listening today, we are going to be creating some new engagement letters for members, which they can use to outline how they are complying with GDPR for the new year. And those engagement letters could be out possibly just inside the new year, something like that.
Well, can you give us a note when you put those up?
Of course.
And we'll put them on the Tax Newswire as well.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Good.
So that's one aspect of cybersecurity, is to underpin that data protection. But there's also the increased use of digital technologies to function on a daily basis, digitalisation of a business, and of course for Making Tax Digital. You need to keep enhanced records or more records in a digital format than you may have done before. And good cybersecurity is sort of a key way of ensuring your business is compliant with all of these things. So there's a couple of questions. If you're happy to go through these?
Yes, yes,
do.
Okay.
Fire away.
Well, a couple of questions I think we get.
Can I just say that these questions we took from the talking points that HMRC gave on the 11th of September, where members send in, or agents send in questions to HMRC, and I asked them to give us the questions. So these are the ones that we've posed to you, aren't they, Mark?
So we took those questions, we sort of summarised them a little bit, and we do find them fairly typical of the type of questions we receive from members whenever I go out and speak to them about cybersecurity. So I guess there's really sort of three, and one of the most important ones is where do I report cybercrime to? And the answer is action fraud. And action fraud is actionfraud.police.uk, a website which is the unified place for reporting cybercrime across the UK, backed by the police. The telephone number is 0300 123-2040.
And we'll put all this together on a note after this.
So it's very important that anybody who suffers from a cybersecurity related issue, hacking, data loss or whatever, not data loss because that's obviously your own fault, but if you've suffered a crime, been the victim of a phishing crime or online fraud attempt or something like that, it is very important that we report these things.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that people now understand that there are different types of criminals. We're not just talking about somebody wearing a hoodie and sort of sitting in their bedroom. And I mean, we're now talking about some very professional.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the criminals can be as small as an individual, a teenager in the bedroom, right up to really quite sophisticated gangs, organised crime, and they themselves have distribution channels for money laundering and so on. They're very well organised. And the other thing that's become really a topic over the last couple of years has been crime as a service, ultimately, which is where anybody could seek out these criminals online and say to them, can you facilitate some crime against this particular organisation? And that could be a phishing, it could be ransomware. It really isn't all that
difficult.
It's
really entrepreneurial, isn't it?
It is.
That's very interesting.
And of course, you go to these people and they say, oh yes, we can put their website offline for a day, $500, and suddenly it goes on. And the motivations for wanting to do that will vary from one person to another, but it's relatively easy to gain access, far easier in many respects to gain access to this type of criminality than it is traditionally. How will any of us know where to go and find a criminal who could launder money? It would be quite difficult, I would imagine. But doing it online becomes a whole new world of, it's click and crime. I've just made that up. That's something that the police are telling us is a continuing trend within cybersecurity issues. So reporting criminal activity, absolutely essential for all of us. And another question that comes up really quite frequently is how can I use removable storage? And it's a posh term for USB memory keys and the like. Now, these type of devices over the last few years have become incredibly cheap. Very, very large volumes, huge capacities, and you just ubiquitous. They're in all sorts of things. So people use them in a way quite frequently to take data home with them. They copy a document, or I'll work on that over the weekend. They put it on the memory key, they take it home and they work on it, and then they give the laptop to their son or daughter, and that goes to school. And suddenly your work data is not just within the office, maybe a traditional office or maybe even your home office, but it's distributed everywhere. So it's quite difficult to keep track of this. So in smaller organisations, I appreciate there are difficulties, particularly around implementing technology to control these things. But small organisations, you might want to consider some sort of usage policy, something to tell your staff, this is a risk, potentially data on that memory key, if you lost it in the street, could become discovered by somebody else, and you've really no idea who that person is, and they themselves may be able to make use of that data they discover. It's a breach, it is a data loss. And under GDPR, you would be expected to report that to the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. So how do you use these things securely? Well, part of it's about policy, telling people how to use them, using them responsibly. Certainly you can also encrypt data. So when you store it on the memory key, you would encrypt data. There are various methods of doing that, and one of the simplest for many people is going to be quite simply use the Save with Encryption option within Microsoft Office. It's a very popular product. Lots of people use Word and Excel. Excel definitely one of the most popular tools for accountants. We're well aware of that. But they have an option within it, say Save with Encryption. Just following that, saving the file with an encrypted document, then copying that onto your memory key and taking it home if you wish to. That's at least going to mean it's secure in transit.
Right.
Obviously, when you're working on it at home, it becomes decrypted, and that maybe is another challenge. You need to understand how well protected your home computer is. Is it as well protected as the one in the office as well? So that's one aspect of using memory keys. And I think the last one is around secure disposal. You use the memory key for a couple of years, it's getting a bit tatty, maybe the capacity is a bit small for what you need it for, so you just give it to your favourite nephew. And they take it to university. Well, that's maybe okay, but you should really format these things beforehand. Try to erase the data that's on them beforehand, and then
you do it on the spur of the moment.
Of course.
Oh, have you got something I can take this? Oh yeah, I think I've got an old memory stick somewhere.
Yeah, you know, and the nephew's about to leave
Certainly
university, so you give him all the the help you possibly can.
Can you just talk quickly about use of cloud?
Yes, so a lot of
people have asked whether is Dropbox secure, for instance.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask us, is the cloud secure? The bottom line is yes. There is very few issues associated with cloud.
Cloud really means someone else's computer, doesn't it?
It does. It means a computer somewhere on the internet.
One,
often a great big one, but it's somewhere else in the world. Services like Dropbox and others, they try very hard to ensure the security of these services. They protect them both digitally and also physically. You think how secure their data centers must be, far more secure than the average house. So they put effort into doing it. It's part of their reputation to protect your data well. And so using these services, they're generally very, very good, and happily to recommend them. I think the only slight caution would be it would be better to try and understand where the data is stored if you can.
Yes.
Is it within the EU? Is it within the UK? Is it within the US? Is it with some other country around the world?
But the big ones, you could be fairly sure.
A lot of activity over the last couple of years where we've seen Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, all these huge web companies put their data centers in the UK specifically to reassure people that their data is held in a location that they would trust.
Thank you. And one of the other tips that HMRC raised is that they often go and do visits to agents who have had their computers compromised.
Right.
And one of the things they look for afterwards is what sort of security software they've got.
Yes.
And they said they found that actually the vast majority do have something on their computer.
Yes.
But what they weren't doing was using it and checking regularly for malware.
Yes.
And viruses.
That's right. It's a lesson. We do understand that people do invest in a piece of software, anti-malware software. That's fine. Do keep the subscription up to date. Make sure
and then use it.
And use it, exactly. And also ensure your computer is updated. Keep the patches that are being applied to address security issues, and keep those updated as well.
Thank you. Well, there we are. We've got some cyber awareness points. Yes. Jane, we had one or two other points just to close. We've got a penalties and payments consultation. Perhaps we just raised the awareness of that.
There's an open consultation on interest and penalties for late payment.
Right.
Which runs until the 3rd of March. There is an item on our newswire about that. And it's basically going to harmonise interest rules for VAT, so they're more like the interest rules for late payment for direct taxes, which is quite a challenge considering how different the system is at the moment.
Yes, all the default surcharges.
Yeah,
and
well,
so
that's the interest, and the default surcharge is also, I think, is going to move in the same way. But again, quite a lot to think about there.
Okay, so there's a consultation out. It'd be useful if people could look at that and send you any comments they have. We've got a current issue with the £100 penalty that you get for a late self-assessment return. I suppose we've always been aware since they changed the rules and said you'd have this penalty whether you actually had any tax to pay or not, that it would cause problems, but it seems that it's causing even bigger problems where people continue not to file their tax return. The particular cases we are concerned about is where someone's been put into self-assessment or led into self-assessment by a well-meaning relative, teacher at college, somebody like that. Certainly one or two. One was a drama student that was required to register as part of his course, which I thought was an extraordinary.
Very strange.
Well, send them out to the big wide world, go and be an actor. And let me set you up for self-assessment before you go, so you're all ready.
Terrifying,
Terrifying, yes. So if people have those sorts of cases where they've now got a £1,000 penalty and actually there was no tax to pay, probably should never have filed a tax return anyway, it would be quite interested to know the extent of those, wouldn't we?
Yes.
And then you had one little bit of good news on the
the trust registration service. Yeah, it's a bit like MTD that you can't not mention it.
No, exactly. So I thought we'd just quickly
the trust
mention
registration service is where you have to register new or existing trusts with an online system that has been live since the summer for trustees and since October for agents, and has been causing quite a lot of problems in our postbag. We have had some successes in getting improvements, and the most recent one is about the deadlines. There is a 31st January deadline to register an existing trust using this register. And the difficulties of registering mean people are very concerned about being able to meet that. And the Revenue have said that they won't extend the deadline, but they will say that for a period up to 5th of March 2018 there won't be any penalties provided you file by 5th of March. I don't think actually we know what the penalty regime is yet, which is interesting.
No, but I mean, one of the comments we're already getting is why can't they extend the deadline? And I think the problem there is that it is actually in a statutory instrument, so it's law.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they've dealt with something by waiving or giving a period of grace. There are precedents for that. So
it's just an easy way round.
It is an easy way round, but I think people also, it's not a very long extension. It's just over a month. So
also, trustees don't want to be getting it wrong, do they?
No, they don't, and they'd rather file by the deadline.
They'd rather, stick to the rules.
So end on the high there. But there have been simplifications and improvements there, but there's still quite a lot, which is definitely problematic. Yeah.
And there's more about that on the website.
There is, and there's an article actually coming up in January's tax line as well.
Okay. Well, we will do a news item to just remind people of what we've been talking about, and perhaps put a few links on there to some of the useful websites and
some of
phone
our cyber resource page as well. Put a link on there for helping people as well.
Very good idea.
So a useful links page.
Yes.
Something for you to look at over Christmas. Well, that's it for this year. We will be coming back to you with our first webinar next year on the 16th of January, which is going to be a digital roundup. So all matters digital will be brought to you. In the meantime, we wish you all a very happy Christmas and hope you have a lovely new year. Thank you for listening.